in conduct. Daily experience gives us the skill to determine that which is useful when the time comes and we need that information. The third instrument is experimentation. Once we do a thing and it works, this may or may not be conclusive evidence. But if a series of actions always will produce the same result, or a series of experiments in a laboratory will always come out to the same effect, then we may say that we have discovered a fact. And facts are rare things, not easy to discover. But wherever experimentation justifies, opinion must be changed. We cannot live by opinions. We cannot be happy with opinions. A wrong opinion will always undermine and destroy us in the end. We may think for a time that we have something wonderful, but if it is not supported by experience, if it is not proven by experiment, and if it is not justified by the traditions of the race, we are liable to be in serious trouble. Now, in the form of learning, what is the best learning at the moment that we can think of? Well, I suppose it is the kind that we have in short supply at the present time, and that is philosophy. Philosophy was the guide of antiquity. Science is the guide of the modern world. Philosophy, however, is a bridge. The purpose of philosophy is not to justify itself. It is to reconcile man's spiritual and material needs. It is to bring the superior and the inferior into harmony. Philosophy proves or justifies religion and produces various distinct and definite media for the expression of integrities. Philosophy, therefore, helps the individual to live according to the best part of his own life. One of the Greek philosophers was once asked by a father what the advantage would be if his son went to study with a philosopher. And the philosopher replied, well, if you do that, if you do let your son study with a really learned man, there will be an unusual change in the boy. For instance, when you go to the Circus Maximus to see the games, if your son has been taught by a philosopher, he will not be one stone sitting on another. Which meant really, of course, that the stone benches, that the boy, without knowledge, without wisdom, without insight, was little better than a rock. So philosophy has as its purpose to demonstrate the values of life, to help the individual to live a good life. Everyone must have some kind of a philosophy. Atheism is some kind of a philosophy. It is something by which the individual receives the incentives to a certain area of conduct. Enlightened philosophy is that which impels the individual to live as nearly as he can in harmony with the essential demonstrable truths of life. And this we have very great need of today. We need more people who have a more or less philosophic background, one in which they have found benefit from experience. So the next thing is to take a good look at the experiences in your own life. If you can remember back to early childhood, you can begin to estimate the effects of things that happened to you. Maybe when you were 5 or 6 years old, something happened that you didn't understand. Something hurt you. Something injured you in one way or another. Now, from a standpoint of maturity, you can estimate the significance of that. I know several cases in which a person, having passed through an unfortunate or tragic circumstance in early life, has carried the hurt of this all the way through to the present time. They have always rejected something because it reminded them of the hurt. They have always held a grudge against a line of life, a race, a nation, or an environment, simply because they suffered there. There, time and time again, prejudice arises from an experience that has not been assimilated or has not been transmuted. we must all transmute experience into soul power. We must all try to find ways to prevent things that have happened to us from distorting our attitudes toward life in general. We must do everything possible to overcome an animosity, to get rid of a jealousy, to sublimate a hatred. We must realize that every destructive attitude which we continue to hold will ultimately destroy us. Now, it may be that of our own thinking, we can overlook this. We can say, after all, it all happened long ago, the persons involved are dead, and why should we continue to worry about them? But if the prejudice has already been locked in the subconscious, it will not die with the person with whom it was associated. It will continue to live. It will be a ghost in our own lives until by a personal and conscious action of the will we remove it. Now, we can say, how do we remove a grievance? After all, you can say it's not there and it's still there. You can pray to be delivered from it, and chances are you won't be. You will say, I forgive the individual, but you don't really. The grievance sticks because it has become part of the subconscious mind. Also, it sticks because we have no way of forgetting it. If we could forget the past, we would find certain experiences would fade away. But unfortunately, we would be further impoverished. It is not the experience that is forgotten, but the experience that is understood that is important. So what do we have to get out of our grievance? The only way out of the grievance is to transmute it into experience growth. The only way we can get over a grievance is to find out what it taught us and be grateful for the lesson. If it didn't teach us anything, then it has been a failure on our own part. If we can say, I don't see any good I ever got from this misfortune, then you have to look further, because you have had some good. You have had some good even if it took 50 years to come around, because perhaps this day, when you for the first time question the grievance, this is the beginning of the good. But gradually, and with a little experience, we can discover in most instances that we were party to the misfortunes that have afflicted us. Our own attitudes were wrong. We tried to do something that wasn't strictly ethical. We tried to take advantage of someone else. We depended on someone else for things we should have done ourselves. And gradually, little by little, we become a party to the problem that hurt us. I know there are a good many cases in which, for example, marriages have gone sour. And after it's all over, the individual could do nothing but complain against the marriage partner. Impossible person. Oh, no one knows what I've been through with that person. Oh, it is unbelievable. And then at the very end comes a cute line. Well, of course, I really didn't love him in the first place. This was the answer. But the fact that this was the real answer doesn't always show up. And we have to work for it. We have to dig into ourselves and find the answers. We have to realize our own part in the misfortunes that have faced us, or that we have faced. And by so doing, we gradually come to learn to use the mind. We use it constructively, and we transmute disasters into opportunities for personal growth. And we learn from mistakes, and we learn how all kinds of strange prejudices and pressures within ourselves affect conduct. If we live in a little world of business and television, we'll never find these things. We have to begin to look further, to go out into the larger sphere of knowledge. We have to learn to watch other people and see how they are affected by their own conduct. And we have to realize that we are also people. And when we see someone in trouble for a certain attitude, we can say to ourselves, do I have that attitude also? Or am I headed in for a disillusionment? So by degrees, we gain all these attitude changes. Now, there's another point, however, that we should also carefully remember. And this is one of the most difficult sometimes to get around to. And that is that in our effort to improve ourselves, we must not stew in our own juice. We must not become constantly self-centered. We must not, under any condition, devote our whole life to trying to understand ourselves. It becomes too burdensome, and for the most part, we don't have the working tools to make a successful job of it. So in problems where it becomes obvious that we need ventilation, the best answer to this is to get into new activities, get away from self, get our minds off of what we think about ourselves, and become more and more concerned with basic evidences of self-improvement. Therefore, it is very good to have these avocational outlets, which will permit us to take the pressure of our own constant involvement in our own attitudes. So we can say that each person should have at least one or two significant, meaningful, useful avocational outlets. They should do something, create something. If they are in business, then the outlet should be creative, because it must compensate for that which is a more or less sterile daily burden. If, however, the nature of the person is highly artistic, and they have featured that all their lives, then it is most likely that they will need social stability, that they will need to develop stronger moral integrities, and that they will find it important to be more practical in their daily living. The artist, therefore, may find it good to go into social service work, or something working with young people, something to get the individual out of his own field, but into a compensating field to balance his own intelligence, so that he is working with a new group of faculties within his own mind. It is also very important that these faculties should be constructively used. I know a case of a person who, for many years, was a housewife. No more, no less. Always, however, down in the depths of themselves, they had a desire to create something, to be creative. When the children grew up and fortunate financial situations made it possible, this individual went strongly into art and divided their attention between the development of artistic potentials and the direction and guidance of social service projects. The person went on into very advanced years, busy to the very last with things that were meaningful. They had a wonderful time, and at the same time they could still cook a good meal. It didn't destroy the domesticity. Now here's where we have some trouble sometimes. The tendency in professional life is to gradually destroy the family. The individual who is in business, and if all the members of the family are employed, the home is the sufferer. Gradually, the development of the personal relationships are damaged. Everyone should be faced throughout life with personal relationships. To escape them entirely or to avoid them because they are uncomfortable is a serious limitation upon growth. We must not only live with ourselves, we must live with other people. And we must live with people we do not entirely agree with. We do not necessarily, however, have to accept unpleasant situations as completely endurable. But we must try, to the best of our abilities, to maintain a balance. What we need to do in substance is to keep our faith in God and our realization of the divine plan of which we are a part. To have this realization of a plan and a planner, a purpose, and that